I wonder if you can remember when you first struggled with the connection between faith and your work. For me, it was about 25 years ago. I'd come back to faith while studying economics at Oxford, as unlikely as that sounds. And I had a job as an economic consultant. It was intellectually challenging. I was giving corporate strategy advice to large companies, public policy advice to governments. But I found myself increasingly frustrated and unsure of how I could connect my faith in Jesus Christ to what I was doing. I couldn't see the connection, and it felt a bit like I was prostituting my skills to work that I couldn't really believe in. So I began to wonder about my calling, and I thought perhaps I should train in theology and become a pastor and life would be easy. Well, back then, resources on theological education and work were quite hard to find. I looked around, there was nothing in the Christian bookshop, a little bit at church. There were no marketplace ministries around, no online resources. My lucky break came when some friends and family members introduced me to Leslie Newbigin and some place in Vancouver called Regent College. Well, someone like me in that kind of position today would have access to a lot more resources on the connection between faith and work. Far more seminary programs, lectures and modules, far more marketplace ministries of the kind we've just been hearing about from Eric, and a lot more books and online material. I wonder then, despite this, whether you have the same kind of disappointing experience that I have. Because I find that many Christians in many of the churches that I go to still struggle enormously with some version of the sacred-secular divide. Do you have that experience? Is it just me? I'm seeing lots of nods. Why is that? Why is it that after so many decades of hard and successful labor by this movement to generate theological resources on faith, work, integration, so many Christians still struggle with some version of the sacred-secular divide? I want to suggest that to begin to understand this, we need to consider, is there a word that can describe and capture the nature of the kind of theological education that I needed at that time and many people still need today? When adult, mature Christians need to be taught that following Jesus involves all of their life, including work, or that whatever they do, including work, they should do as unto the Lord, or that God is present to answer prayer in the detail of their daily work. When mature adult believers need to be taught these things, then I think we're dealing with remedial theological education. The sad truth is that the average professional has around 5 years or more of post-secondary education to prepare them to function in the complex modern environment that we live in. But the level of their theological education is probably around grade 9 or 10 high school. And I can hear my daughter saying to me, "Hey, that's pretty unfair to grade 10 high school students." It's little wonder that integration between faith and work is challenging for many, many people. It seems to me that it's not an exaggeration to say that a faulty theology of work, vocation, and mission has been a significant contributor to the secularization of Western society. I think it's worth saying that again. A faulty theology of work, vocation, and mission has been a significant contributor to the secularization of Western society. What would it be like if we recovered a fully biblical theology of vocation, work, and mission? It's an exciting prospect. But if we want to see more salt, if we want to see more Christians stopping the rot and drawing out the flavour of God's presence in the various spheres of life in which they've been scattered. We need to move a lot of people from the milk of a basic theology of vocation to the meat of sustained theological reflection on the particular institution, industry, or occupation that they're involved in. But the reality is, many Christians do need the remedial class, and they need to realize what many of us have realized, what God is already doing in their lives to give them the confidence to expect more. Now, it seems to me that theological schools, seminaries and Bible colleges must share a reasonable proportion of the blame for this rather depressing state of affairs. After all, the major educators, theological educators of Christians are pastors. But the trainers of those pastors are our theological institutions. It seems to me that Mark Green has things exactly right when he says that the de facto mission strategy of the global evangelical movement and the theological institutions that train its leaders is this: to recruit the people of God to use some of their leisure time to join the missionary initiatives of church-paid workers. Friends, this strategy is not going to cut it. For all the genuine advances that have been made, formal theological education is still largely clerical and scholastic. That's fighting talk, isn't it? What do I mean by that? Clerical. I think that we are still too influenced by a Christendom model. A Christendom model in which pastors are trained for a career track in one-man leadership of churches that already exist with tithe-paying congregations to finance them. Friends, this is not the context of 21st century Western culture. And this model ensures that all of the theological resources that we've laboured to generate remain on the periphery of our theological institutions, leaving the core theological curriculum largely intact. So clerical. Scholastic. We evangelicals have a tendency for intellectual insecurity. We rightly have pursued analytical, intellectual rigour in studying theology and in how we read the Bible. But I think that we've also developed some insecurity in our desire to be credible to the secular academy. We sometimes, too often, ape its individualistic values and its dichotomizing of theory and practice. The secular academy doesn't need community, and it doesn't need discipleship. But discipleship and community is of the essence of theological education. Theological education belongs to the church, and it needs to be restored to the church and the mission to which the church is called to embody and equip for the whole mission of God in the world. So what do we need to do? We need a holistic understanding, theology of mission, vocation and work at the core of the theological curriculum, infused in every core course. We need a stronger partnership between scholars and practitioners, institutions of theological education and churches. We need to hire more reflective practitioners onto the faculty of our theological institutions. We need to draw in those pastors who really get it to train and envision the next generation. Many such pastors are in this room. We need to engage theological schools in the kind of collaborative networks that we've just been hearing about from Eric. Third, pastors in training need to experience firsthand what it's like to work in the secular world. The Church of England has really set a fine example. Ordinands are required to undertake a minimum of 2 to 3 years secular work experience before they are allowed to start ordination training. Finally, we need to make theological education of the kind that we need accessible, but without compromising that discipleship in community element that is so important. Face-to-face residential education is still the gold standard, but it's incredibly expensive. And it's not for everyone. We need to innovate with the technological tools that we have, but with our mission of discipleship in community in mind. North America can learn a lot, I think, from examples like the St. Miletus College and Westminster Theological Centre in London, UK, if I can be allowed in Boston to mention that country. In-service, intensive cohort models that allow people to engage in high-quality theological education whilst remaining in work are also wonderful ways of broadening access. So these are some of the things that we need to do. But there's one big obstacle left that I haven't mentioned to change. Theological education is in economic and financial crisis. Over the last decade, enrollment has fallen by an average of 12%. Costs have increased by 20%. Donations and endowments have been hit hard by the global financial crisis. And yet, during the same period, the number of schools accredited has increased by 7%. We have oversupply and falling demand. Boards and administrators are under enormous pressure to cut costs and balance budgets. The mission drift at the heart of theological education that I've been describing is already leading the most innovative churches to abandon formal training for less clerical and less scholastic on-the-job training. The danger is short-termism in the response to this financial crisis will lead us to abandon the very discipleship in community models that are so important to Christian formation. Theological education is crucial to the future health of the global church. We, board members, administrators, donors, we need to put our money where our missional mouth is. The stakes are very high. Leslie Newbigin was in no doubt at all that Western culture represents the greatest missionary challenge of our age. We don't need more seminary graduates crammed full of academic theological knowledge but lacking leadership skills or missional vision. We don't want innovative churches to abandon formal theological education and potentially regress into the kind of anti-intellectualism that evangelicals, unfortunately, can so easily fall prey to. But we could use this crisis to reinvent theological education to serve the missional purposes of the church for generations to come. It's my conviction that recovery of a fully biblical theology of vocation, work, and mission has the potential to energize a radical new missionary movement in the world today, just as it has done in the past. Friends, this is the challenge and the opportunity that we need to rise to. Thank you.
I'm going to ask you two questions. One came from Ben Norquist, and then I want to hear a little bit more, because I know a lot of folks in the room have heard about the Reframe Project. So I'm going to ask you secondarily about the Reframe Project. But Ben asked this question: can a variety of possibilities or models be offered for your suggestion that pastors need to experience working in the world?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, I think we could be very creative with that. I think that it's much easier for churches to require of ordinands that they have experience. It's very difficult for an individual school to do that, because the way they look at it is we're just reducing the accessibility to our particular slice of the market. We're making ourselves less attractive by putting another barrier in the way of people. But I think that what we can do is form programs where we put pastors in training alongside folk in the workplace. We expose pastors in training to workplaces very specifically. We bring in a much wider range of believers from a wide range of spheres to talk to pastors as part of their formal education.
Great. Here, just briefly about the Reframe project, if you would, please.
Yes. Well, Reframe is a film-based 10-session curriculum for whole-of-life discipleship that we've developed in the Marketplace Institute at Regent College. I can announce that it is being launched on Tuesday. Check out reframecourse.com, and it's amazingly affordable, $90 for 10 35-minute professionally produced films that will take you through a biblical theology, a narrative structure of mission, vocation, and work.